Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che here to provide you with the latest. Let us begin with the headlines. In her National Assembly speech, President Park Geun-hye laid out next year's budget plan and policy goals. She also expressed her determination to see proposed changes in how history textbooks are made in Korea implemented. Although interest rates are at an all-time low, Koreans continue to tighten their belts and build their savings. The reunions for war-separated Korean families ended yesterday, but for those who participated, the memories will last a lifetime. We have the story of one participant who shares a little bit of what the experience was like. We begin with the National Assembly speech by the President. President Park Geun-hye delivered a lengthy one there, and she had her sharing the government's budget plan and pending national issues. That was some of her focus. The speech, however, did not begin on the dot with protests by the main opposition party over plan to reintroduce state-authored history textbooks, and that caused some delays. Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
President Park laid out the government's budget plan and policy goals for next year in her speech before the National Assembly on Tuesday. But she also had other objectives in mind, including urging lawmakers to swiftly pass a handful of key bills.
우리 경제의 활력을 불어넣고 청년들에게 일자리를 주기 위한 중요한 경제 활성화 법안들이 수년째 처리되지 못하고 아직까지 국회에 계류되어 있습니다.
One is a bill aimed at improving the service industry, which has been held up at the National Assembly for 3 years. The president said a competitive service industry could create as many as 690,000 jobs. She also emphasized how costly a slow ratification of Korea's free trade agreements could be for exporters.
한중 FTA의 경우 비준이 늦어지면 하루 약 40억 원의 수출 기회를 잃어버리게 됩니다.
She also used the speech to address the controversial issue of state history textbooks. The government wants a single state-authorized history textbook for secondary schools to eliminate what it characterizes as left-leaning content in existing books. President Park addressed the opposition party's concerns on the issue.
일부에서 역사 교과서 국정화로 역사 왜곡이나 미화가 있지 않을까 우려하고 있지만 그런 교과서가 나오는 것은 저부터 절대로 좌시하지 않을 것입니다.
But whether the remarks were enough to win over opposition lawmakers on the controversial issue remains to be seen. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Korea's two main rival parties' reaction to the presidential address to the parliament was as different as night and day. Our Park Ji-won brings us their differing views.
The ruling Saenuri Party welcomed the speech, vowing to support the president's agenda, including her 4 major reforms. The Conservative Party also called on the opposition to stop campaigning against the administration's decision to publish a single government-authorized history textbook and urged them to work with the government to find a resolution.
The main opposition party needs to put an end to all of the activities it is doing to raise eyebrows, such as inciting political strife and organizing protests. The parliament should support the president's efforts to govern with bipartisan cooperation for the public and the nation.
The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy slammed the president's address, saying her message had failed to provide any tangible hope or vision.
The president failed to offer a clear vision on how to overcome the current difficulties with the economy. It is also very hard to say whether the president's policies could ever resolve such pressing issues as youth unemployment.
Regarding the history textbook issue, the main opposition party said President Park is dividing the nation over the matter rather than normalizing history education. The Liberal Party stressed that the Park administration needs to halt its current efforts to control history textbook publication if the president really is aiming to unite the public on the matter. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Staying on the subject of deadlock over the history textbook issue, ruling party chairman Kim Moo-sung said Tuesday it could be reasonable to have current Education Minister Hwang Sung-hee replaced for not having a concrete plan for the textbook revisions in response to calls from party members. The opposition bloc, meanwhile, vowed to dig deeper into its allegations that the Education Ministry set up a secret task force to carry out the textbook plan. The government is seeking to create a single state-authorized history text for secondary school students starting in 2017 to correct what it says is predominantly left-leaning content. Korea's Defense Acquisition Program Administration, or DAPA, is planning to develop 4 key technologies for its fighter jet project the United States has refused to transfer to South Korea. The decision was outlined in a report to President Park Geun-hye by DAPA Minister Chang Myung-jin in a closed-door meeting on Tuesday. The 4 key technologies include multi-purpose radar and radio frequency jammers. Separately, another DAPA official said the organization plans to secure major operational algorithms from Israel, Britain, or Sweden in order to develop the source code needed for the technologies. Lockheed Martin had initially offered to transfer 25 technologies for the KF-X project, but the U.S. government barred the transfer of the 4 key technologies, citing international traffic in arms regulations. Dozens of military officers were awarded promotions today in a move to help South Korea bolster its military might. 10 major generals were awarded a 3rd star, lifting them to the rank of lieutenant general. They will oversee army units and personnel. In addition, 85 colonels were made 1-star generals. The Defense Ministry says the appointments were made to enhance the country's defense readiness and Korea's operations with the United States. More than 300 people have been killed in a powerful earthquake which struck northern parts of Afghanistan and Pakistan on Monday. The shockwaves from the 7.5 magnitude quake were felt as far as New Delhi. Our Son Jung-in has the latest.
It was the strongest earthquake felt in South Asia in recent decades. Terrified adults and screaming school children poured into the streets when the earthquake struck on Monday afternoon local time. One Kabul resident whose house was severely damaged described the moment the quake struck.
I was sitting at home when the earthquake happened and I came out of the home with children, but one of my grandsons started running. I asked him not to run, he continued, and then the wall collapsed on him and he was wounded.
An Afghan TV presenter who was in the middle of reporting the news was forced to leave his desk as the earthquake shook the building. The magnitude 7.5 quake was centered in northeast Afghanistan near the border with Pakistan. Casualties are expected to rise in the coming days as rescuers, in some cases hampered by mudslides following recent heavy rains in the region, struggle to reach remote areas. Power and communications have gone out in many areas, preventing the authorities from getting a clear picture of the damage. A tragic incident occurred in the Afghan province of Takhar, where at least 12 schoolgirls were killed in rush to escape their collapsing building. Shock waves were felt as far away as northern India and Uzbekistan, but no deaths or damage have been reported there. South Korean embassies in Afghanistan and other affected countries said there were no reports of Korean casualties. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
A U.S. destroyer patrolled the South China Sea, potentially stirring up conflict with China. Connie Kim looks into the trouble brewing on the islands built by China on territory claimed by 4 other countries.
An unnamed U.S. defense official told Reuters on Tuesday an American destroyer sailed within 12 nautical miles, or 20 kilometers, of China's man-made islands in the South China Sea. The Spratlys are a disputed group of more than 750 reefs, islets, atolls, cays, and islands claimed by 4 other countries, including Vietnam and the Philippines. The Pentagon has thus far declined to comment, but had previously said that the patrols are within its rights of free navigation and are routine, but Washington's decision is sure to anger Beijing. 12 nautical miles around a territory is internationally recognized as sovereign waters, but the U.S. does not recognize the man-made islands as China's sovereign territory. Washington says the construction of artificial islands on submerged reefs does not entitle a country to claim a territorial limit. Even though China does not recognize the islands as Chinese territory, this will be the first time the U.S. has breached the 12-mile nautical limit since China began building up the islands in 2013. Before the U.S. sent the destroyer, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi advised the U.S. to think again before acting, urging the country not to act blindly or make trouble out of nothing. China has long stood firm on its claim to the islands, saying it would never allow any country to violate its territorial waters and airspace in the area. U.S. experts in China caution against further escalation as Washington could launch another patrol near the artificial islands in the coming weeks. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Consumer sentiment in Korea improved for the fourth straight month in October, rebounding from the economic fallout of the recent outbreak of the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. The Bank of Korea says its consumer sentiment index came to 105 this month, up 2 points from the previous month. A reading above 100 indicates optimists outnumber pessimists about economic conditions in the coming month. The index has been on a steady rise since it tumbled below the benchmark 100 in June, when fears about the MERS outbreak were at their peak. The latest figures show Koreans had a more positive outlook on income and spending, but they still have a gloomy view about the future of the local economy. It's savings day here in Korea, and as it turns out, more Korean households are saving instead of spending, despite interest rates that are at a record low. Shin Se-min outlines some of the reasons behind this trend.
More and more Koreans are keeping their wallets closed and building up their savings instead. A recent report by the government and the Bank of Korea shows that the net savings rate for households was over 6% last year, an increase of 3 consecutive years. The net savings rate indicates the ratio of money households set aside from their disposable income. So why save up more cash, especially when the nation's key interest rate is at an all-time low?
I'm not married yet, so I'm saving up a third of my salary for a wedding later on.
I'm saving every penny so I can buy a house.
The country's rapidly aging population and a tighter job market has also prompted many to start saving up.
Even though consumer spending has picked up in the recent months, the looming uncertainties over the Korean economy are prompting Koreans to save for later.
On top of that, Korea's gross national income fell 0.1% in the second quarter of this year compared to the same period last year, indicating people are spending less to save more. Even see the trend as a failure of the government's efforts to spur domestic spending, including a $19.5 billion stimulus package and a decrease in the consumption tax, while the central bank kept its key rate unchanged for 4 straight months at a record low of 1.5%. But experts say that this greater savings trend does not pose massive problems, as only so much can be done to prop up growth through spending. They add that ultimately, exports need to expand to see significant growth in the Korean economy. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Lotte Group says its governance structure has become more transparent. The retail giant says it has resolved more than 80% of its cross-shareholding relations among its affiliates. Lotte Chairman Shin Dong-bin has vowed to resolve the company's cross-shareholding structure by the end of this month, after a bitter succession battle shone a spotlight on the company's complex management structure. The group says Lotte Hotel bought shares of 3 key affiliates to remove cross-shareholding ties between 200 companies, while the chairman bought stakes in Lotte Confectionery from a construction unit to resolve relations between 140 companies. Lotte is also currently preparing to list Lotte Hotel as part of the efforts to make the firm's management structure more transparent. The recent round of reunions for Korea's war-torn families, which wrapped up yesterday, will very likely be the last for most participants. Our Kwon So-hwa met up with one participating South Korean family for their take on the emotional event.
It's a rainy night. Kim Chang-geun and his 2 sons are back home after a visit with Kim's 2 younger brothers. It wasn't an ordinary family gathering. It was the first time Kim and his brothers had seen one another in more than 6 decades after they were separated by the Korean War. Kim was the first of more than 250 South Koreans to arrive at the meeting place in Sokcho last week ahead of the second round of reunions. The amount of time they had to catch up on things was only 3 days, or rather 12 hours, before having to say their goodbyes. Kim says it still breaks his heart.
자꾸 이렇게 날들을 물어보면 난 기분만 더 상해요, 시방. 알겠어요? 나 시방 걔들 그 생각만 하면 눈물이 그냥 나와.
아까 오면서 아버지 얘기했잖아요. 속에 있는 거 감추지 말고 그냥 표현하면 그게 여태까지 몇십 년을 묻어만 놓고 살았잖아요.
나 헤어질 때가 말이야. 걔들이 와서 유리창 두들기고 할 때가 내 가슴이 어떻는지 나 이런 하면은 시방 또 내 가슴은 뒤집어놓는 속이요.
What's more, Kim had to face the truth about the rest of his family when his North Korean brothers wrote down the family tree, one of the most important things the separated families do during the reunions.
내 동기간들 그게 다 죽고 둘 남았으니 나 따지고 보면 그 요거만한 거 전매기까지 했으면 7남매였었어요. 그러니까 6남매 남았는데 6남매에서도 이제 다 죽고서 나한테 셋 남았어요.
Kim says despite being happy together, the irony was that they often ran out of topics to talk about, given how long they've been separated. Kim's son Jung-ho added that the atmosphere of the group meetings was something that could be improved.
들리지를 않을 정도로 이 한 90가족이 90테이블을 놓고 웅성웅성하니까 이게 대화가 안 되는 거예요. 어쨌든 개별 상봉할 수 있는 시간이 마련되어 있는 것들이 좋은 부분이었는데 그럼에도 불구하고 아쉬웠던 부분들은 개별 상봉 부분이 너무 짧아요.
Kim and his family know that without reunification, there is hardly any chance they will see their relatives on the other side of the border again. But the 83-year-old doesn't ask for much.
편지가 오래만 하게 되면 이 얼굴 한번 보지 않아도 아무 상관없어. 여기 미국 가서 사는 사람들도 편지하고 하는데 뭐 그것만 되면 되는데 그게 안 돼가지고.
권소아, 아리랑 뉴스.
We've come to the end of our newscast. More coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time. Do join us then. For now, thank you for watching.